Commander Tae-ho Kim stood in the Great Hall of Harmony Prime, watching the endless debate unfold before him. The massive space station hung in the void between star systems, serving as the home of the Galactic Confederation. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in floating chairs arranged in perfect circles, their voices echoing through the chamber as they argued about proper procedures. Tae-ho's hands gripped the metal railing until his knuckles turned white. On the main screen, red dots marked the locations of destroyed colonies. Each dot represented thousands of dead civilians. Each dot meant families torn apart, cities reduced to ash, and dreams cut short. Yet the council members continued to debate. The sacred protocols must be followed, declared Ambassador Kael'thon, his tall blue form rising from his seat. The Vorthak had been part of the Confederation for over 300 years, and they never let anyone forget it. We cannot simply rush into military action without proper consideration. Dr. So-Young Park sat beside Tae-ho in the Human Observer section. She had spent weeks studying the strange crystal formations left behind at each attack site. Her research painted a terrifying picture, but the Council seemed more interested in following rules than saving lives. "Commander," she whispered, "we need to show them the latest data." Tae-ho nodded and activated his communication device. "Council Speaker, Dr. Park has urgent information about the attacks." The speaker, an ancient creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, turned its attention toward them. "The human representative may present her findings." So-Young stood and walked to the central platform. Her hands shook slightly as she activated the holographic display. Three-dimensional images of the crystal formations appeared in the air above her head. "These structures absorb all forms of energy," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "Our scans show they can drain power from starships, weapons, even living beings. The attackers are using technology we don't understand." The crystals in the hologram pulsed with an eerie blue light. Data streams showed energy readings that made no sense according to known physics. "Furthermore," So-Young continued, "the pattern of attacks suggests they're moving toward more populated systems. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the core worlds within 2 months." Murmurs filled the chamber. Several representatives leaned forward in their seats, but Ambassador Kael'thon remained unmoved. "Dr. Park's research is impressive," he said, "but we must not let fear drive us to hasty decisions. The Confederation has faced threats before. Our diplomatic corps should attempt contact with these beings. Perhaps they can be reasoned with." Prime Nexus Veltar, the artificial intelligence that spoke for the Synthetic Coalition, projected its voice through speakers around the room. "Analysis indicates a 23.7% probability of successful military engagement without extensive preparation. Diplomatic contact success probability is unknown but worth attempting." Tae-ho felt his patience snap. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Permission to speak," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. The speakers. Tendrils waved in what might have been annoyance. "The human observer may speak, but briefly." 3 more colonies went silent while we've been sitting here talking," Tae-ho said. His voice remained calm, but his eyes burned with anger. "New Jeju, Haven's Rest, and Peaceful Valley, 30,000? People lived on those worlds. They sent distress calls for help. We did nothing." "Commander Kim," Ambassador Kael'thon's voice held a warning tone, "the Confederation does not do nothing. We follow established procedures that have kept peace in this galaxy for centuries." "Peace?" Tae-ho laughed bitterly. "Tell that to the families on those dead worlds. Tell that to the children who won't grow up because we needed to form a committee first." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some representatives shouted support for Tae-ho's words. Others demanded he be removed for disrespecting the council. The speaker's tendrils flashed bright colors as it tried to restore order. So-Young touched Tae-ho's arm. "Commander, please, let me show them more data." She activated another holographic display. This one showed star charts with predicted attack routes. "Based on the pattern," she said, raising her voice above the noise, "they're following old hyperspace lanes. These routes were abandoned centuries ago because they're unstable. But if someone knew how to use them properly, they could move through the galaxy much faster than our ships." The chamber grew quiet as representatives studied the star charts. The predicted path led directly through some of the most populated systems in known space. If Dr. Park is correct, said General Mordek of the Krillian Empire, his scarred face serious, then these attackers will reach Altaria Prime within 6 weeks. 20 billion people live in that system. Prime Nexus Veltar processed this information in seconds. Recalculating threat assessment. Probability of major population loss increases to 87.3% if current attack pattern continues. Ambassador Kael'thon stood again. Even if this data is accurate, we must follow proper protocols. I propose we form a joint research committee to study Dr. Park's findings. Meanwhile, our diplomatic corps can attempt to establish contact with these beings. How long will that take? Teho demanded. Such important decisions cannot be rushed. Perhaps 3 to 4 weeks for the initial committee formation, then 3 to 4 weeks? Teho's voice echoed through the chamber. By then, half the outer rim will be dead. Commander Kim, the speaker's voice boomed, you will control your emotions or be removed from this chamber. Teho looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some showed concern, others irritation, many showed nothing at all. These beings had never faced an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or bought off or scared away with political pressure, but humans had. Earth's history was full of enemies that only understood force. Sometimes talking wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to fight. I understand, Teho said quietly. The Confederation will form its committees and send its diplomats. But while you're debating, people are dying. He turned and walked toward the exit, So Young following close behind. As they reached the door, Ambassador Kael'thon called out, Commander Kim, the human delegation is expected to support Confederation decisions. Your government signed the sacred protocols. Teho stopped but didn't turn around. My government signed those protocols to join a confederation that promised to protect its member worlds. So far, all I see is talk. He left the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the hallway outside. So Young caught up with him near the transport station. Teho, what are you thinking? She asked. You can't just ignore the Confederation. He turned to face her, his expression grim. Those protocols were written for dealing with rational enemies. These crystal creatures don't want to negotiate. They want to consume everything in their path. But if we act without authorization, then we act without authorization. Teho activated his communication device and opened a channel to the human fleet stationed nearby. This is Commander Kim. Prepare all ships for immediate departure. We're going hunting. So Young stared at him. The Council will never forgive this. Better to be alive and unforgiven than dead and diplomatic, Teho replied. Besides, there's something these alien politicians don't understand about humans. When our people are threatened, we don't ask permission to defend them. We just do it. The transport arrived, and they stepped aboard. Through the viewport, Teho could see the lights of human ships beginning to move. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone threatened humanity's children. The age of asking permission was over. The age of taking action had begun. Captain Hyunwoo Lee sat in the command chair of the Seoul Dawn, staring at the emergency message that had just arrived. The words on the screen made his blood run cold. New Busan was under attack. His sister Miran lived there with her husband and 2 children. They had moved to the agricultural world 5 years ago, hoping to build a quiet life growing food for the inner colonies. Now the same crystal formations that had destroyed dozens of other worlds were appearing in New Busan's orbit. Captain, called Lieutenant Ji-Hai Choi from the communications station, we're receiving orders from Harmony Prime. All human vessels are to maintain current positions pending Council authorization for military action. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. For a moment. The Confederation's rules were clear. No military action without unanimous approval from the Council. But those rules had been written by beings who had never faced an enemy like this. Sir? Ji-Hai's voice held a question. Before Hyunwoo could answer, another message arrived. This one came from Commander Teho Kim, transmitted on an encrypted human military channel. All human fleet commanders, the message began. I am activating Earth Defense Force Protocol 7. This protocol predates our membership in the Galactic Confederation and authorizes immediate military action to protect human civilians from hostile alien forces. Any commander who chooses to follow Confederation orders instead of EDF protocols will not face punishment, but those who follow EDF protocols will have my full support. Ji-Hai looked confused. Sir, what is Protocol 7? Hyunwoo smiled grimly. Something the politicians hoped we'd never need to use. He stood up and walked to the tactical display. Red dots showed the positions of crystal ships around New Busan. The formations were the same as those seen at other attacked worlds, but these ships were larger. Whatever these creatures were, they were getting stronger. Protocol 7 was written after the Centauri Wars, Hyunwoo explained to his crew. Back when humanity fought alone against alien invaders. It says that when human civilians are threatened by hostile aliens, human military forces have the authority to engage without waiting for permission from anyone. But sir, said Ensign Dae-hyun at the weapons station, we're part of the Confederation now. Don't we have to follow their rules? The Confederation's rules say we need council approval before we can fight, Hyunwoo replied. But the council isn't here. The council isn't watching their children face death while politicians debate. He activated the ship's communication system. All stations, this is the captain. We are proceeding to New Busan under Earth Defense Force. Authority. Our mission is to protect human civilians from hostile forces. Any crew member who objects to this mission may transfer to another vessel at the next starbase. Silence filled the bridge. Then Ji-hai spoke up. Sir, the crew stands ready, but I have to ask, what happens when we get back? The Confederation could expel humanity for this. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Hyunwoo said. Right now, my sister and her family need help. That's all that matters. The Seoul Dawn changed course, its engines pushing the ship toward the New Busan system at maximum speed. Around them, other human vessels were doing the same thing. The entire human fleet was moving, ignoring Confederation orders and following their own ancient protocols instead. Dr. So-Young Park's voice came over the communication system from the flagship. She was transmitting on all human channels, sharing her research data. All vessels, this is Dr. Park. I'm sending you tactical information about the enemy. Their crystal ships absorb energy from directed energy weapons, lasers, plasma cannons, particle beams. These weapons don't just fail to damage them, they actually make the crystals stronger. Hyunwoo frowned. Then how do we fight them? The crystals can't absorb kinetic energy as efficiently, So-Young continued. Old-fashioned missiles, bullets, and explosive shells seem to be effective. I know it sounds primitive, but our ancestors' weapons might be the key to victory. Ji-hee pulled up the Seoul Dawn's weapon inventory. Sir, we have kinetic torpedo tubes and defensive railguns. Most of our firepower is energy-based, but we do have some physical weapons. What about the other ships? Human vessels were built with backup kinetic systems, she replied. The Confederation thought it was wasteful, but human designers insisted on multiple weapon types. Hyunwoo nodded. Human paranoia had always annoyed their alien allies, but today it might save lives. Contact the other ships, he ordered. Tell them to arm all kinetic weapons and prepare for close-range combat. The journey to New Busan took 18 hours. During that time, more reports arrived from the doomed world. The crystal ships had moved into the atmosphere and were draining energy from the planet's power grid. Cities were going dark one by one. Communication was breaking down as the crystals absorbed even radio signals. But then came a message that changed everything. This is Colonel Park Jin-woo of the New Busan Defense Force. The transmission crackled with static. We've discovered something important. The crystals can't absorb energy from chemical explosives. Our grenades and artillery shells are actually damaging them. I repeat, chemical explosives are effective against the enemy. Hyunwoo felt hope rising in his chest. Ji-hai, what chemical explosives do we have? Standard missile warheads use chemical explosives to trigger their fusion cores, she replied. If we remove the fusion triggers, we'll have pure chemical weapons. Do it. Have the engineering crews modify our entire missile inventory. When they arrived at New Busan, the sight that greeted them was both terrible and beautiful. Massive. Crystal formations covered the sky like deadly flowers, their blue light pulsing as they drained energy from the planet below. But the human fleet was already there, and they were fighting back. Commander Taeho's flagship led the attack, its kinetic weapons hammering against the crystal ships. Explosions bloomed across the alien vessels as chemical warheads found their targets. For the first time since the attacks began, the enemy was taking damage. Seoul Dawn to all vessels, Hyunwoo announced. We're joining the attack. Target the largest crystal formation with all kinetic weapons. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Human ships moved in close, using weapons that their alien allies considered primitive and outdated. But those primitive weapons were tearing through crystal hulls that had seemed invulnerable to advanced energy weapons. Direct hit on the primary formation, HFY reported. The crystal structure is collapsing. On the planet below, lights began coming back on as the energy drain lessened. The crystals were retreating, pulling back from a battle they couldn't win. "Captain," Dae-hyun called out. "Incoming transmission from Harmony Prime." "Let me guess," Hyun-woo said. "The Council wants us to stop fighting and return for a disciplinary hearing." "Actually, sir," Dae-hyun's voice held surprise. "It's a message from General Mordek of the Krillian Empire. He's asking for our tactical data. He says his ships want to try the same approach." Hyun-woo smiled. "Send him everything we have. It's time the galaxy learned how humans fight." The crystal ships were fleeing now, unable to withstand the human assault. New Busan was saved, but more importantly, humanity had proven that these invaders could be defeated. As the Seoul Dawn helped evacuate wounded civilians from the planet's surface, Hyun-woo received a personal message from his sister. "Thank you, big brother." Miran's voice was shaky but alive. "I don't know what you had to do to get here so fast, but I'm grateful." Hyun-woo looked out at the human fleet regrouping around New Busan. They had violated Confederation law to be here. They had ignored direct orders and followed their own ancient protocols instead. But they had also saved 30 million lives. "You're welcome, little sister," he whispered to the empty bridge. "That's what family does for each other." The age of asking permission to defend humanity was over. From now on, when humans were threatened, humans would take action. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. The Seoul Dawn drifted silently through the asteroid field, its sensors scanning for any sign of the enemy. Captain Hyun-woo Lee had volunteered his ship for the reconnaissance mission, knowing that someone needed to make direct contact with the crystal beings to understand what they truly were. "Captain," whispered Ensign Dae-hyun from the sensor station, "I'm picking up energy signatures 3 kilometers ahead. The patterns match the crystal formations from New Busan." Hyun-woo nodded. "All stop. Prepare for first contact procedures." "Lieutenant," Ji-hai Choi looked up from her station. "Sir, shouldn't we report this to the Confederation Council first? The first contact protocols require— "The protocols require a lot of things," Hyun-woo interrupted. "But these beings have already made contact by attacking our colonies. I think we're past the formal introduction stage." Through the view screen, they could see the alien vessels emerging from behind the asteroids. The crystal ships were beautiful. In a terrifying way, their blue light casting strange shadows across the rocky debris. But as they drew closer, something unexpected happened. A voice filled the Seoul Dawn's bridge. It wasn't transmitted through their communication systems. Instead, it seemed to speak directly into their minds, cold and emotionless. "Biological entities," the voice said. "You have interfered with our feeding. This is unacceptable." Hyun-woo felt a chill run down his spine. "This is Captain Hyun-woo Lee of the human vessel Seoul Dawn. We seek peaceful communication." "Peace," the voice laughed, a sound like breaking glass, "is irrelevant. We are the devourers. We consume energy in all its forms. Your resistance has been noted and will be overcome." Dr. So-young Park's voice crackled over the communication system from the flagship. She had been monitoring the contact from a safe distance. "Captain Lee," she said urgently, "the energy readings are spiking. They're preparing to attack." "We came here to talk," Hyun-woo said to the alien presence in his mind. "Surely we can reach some kind of agreement." "Agreement," the devourer voice seemed amused, "requires equals. You are food. We are the ones who feed. There can be no agreement between a meal and the one who consumes it." The crystal ships began moving closer, their formations growing brighter, as they prepared their energy-draining weapons. But Hyun-woo had learned something important at New Busan. These beings might be powerful, but they weren't invincible. "All stations," he ordered. "Arm kinetic weapons. Prepare to engage." "Sir," Ji-hai protested, "we're supposed to establish peaceful contact first. The Confederation will—" "The Confederation isn't here," Hyun-woo snapped, "and these things just told us they consider us food. I'd say peaceful contact just failed." The Seoul Dawn's kinetic torpedo tubes swiveled toward the nearest crystal ship. chemical explosive warheads loaded into the launch chambers, each one capable of tearing through the alien hull plating that energy weapons couldn't touch. "You surprise us," the Devourer voice said. "Most biological entities surrender when they understand their fate. Your species shows unusual stubbornness." "You haven't seen anything yet?" Hyun-woo replied grimly. "Fire all tubes!" The torpedoes streaked across space, their chemical explosives detonating against the crystal hulls in brilliant flashes of light. The lead Devourer ship shuddered under, the impact cracks appearing in its crystalline structure. "Impossible," the alien voice hissed. "Your primitive weapons should not—" The crystal ship's main section broke apart, its blue light flickering and dying. The other Devourer vessels immediately changed their formation, spreading out to avoid the human weapons. "They're adapting," Dae-hyun reported. "The other ships are staying out of torpedo range." "Then we go to them," Hyun-woo decided. "Helm, close to point-blank range. Weapons, prepare the railguns." The Soul Dawn accelerated toward the enemy formation, its kinetic, railguns charging for close-range combat. The Devourers fired their energy-draining beams, but the human ship's primitive chemical-powered systems continued operating even as its advanced technology failed. "This is fascinating," So Young's voice came over the radio. "The Devourers have built their entire civilization around energy manipulation. They've never encountered an enemy that relies on chemical reactions and kinetic force." "Lucky for us," Hyun-woo muttered as another railgun volley tore through a crystal ship's hull. The battle raged for 20 minutes. The Soul Dawn took heavy damage from the Devourer energy weapons, but its backup systems kept it fighting. Meanwhile, the human kinetic weapons systematically destroyed 3 crystal ships and damaged 2 others. Finally, the surviving Devourers began to retreat. "This encounter will be reported to the collective," the alien voice said as the crystal ships pulled back. "Your species has proven more troublesome than anticipated. We will adapt our tactics accordingly." "You do that," Hyun-woo replied. "But remember, humanity doesn't surrender. Ever." The crystal ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Soul Dawn alone among the asteroids. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. "Captain," Ji-hai said quietly, "we just engaged in unauthorized first contact with a hostile alien species. The Confederation is going to be furious." Before Hyun-woo could respond, his communication system activated. Ambassador Kael'thon's blue face appeared on the screen, his expression one of barely controlled anger. "Captain Lee," the Vorthak diplomat said coldly, "you were ordered to observe and report, not engage in combat. Your actions have violated the first contact protocols and potentially doomed any chance of peaceful resolution." "With respect, Ambassador," Hyun-woo replied, "there was never any chance of peaceful resolution. These beings consider us food. They told me so directly." "That is irrelevant. The proper procedure is to withdraw and report to the Council for what?" Hyun-woo interrupted. "More committees? More debates? While you're forming study groups, these Devourers are moving toward the core worlds." Kael'thon's face flushed, a deeper shade of blue. "Captain, you are hereby ordered to return to Harmony Prime for disciplinary proceedings. Your unauthorized actions could result in humanity's expulsion from the Confederation." The communication ended abruptly. Ji-hai looked worried. "Sir, what do we do now?" Hyun-woo was about to answer when another signal came through. This time it was General Mordek of the Krillian Empire, his scarred face showing an expression of grim approval. "Captain Lee," the Krillian warrior said, "my government has been monitoring your engagement with the crystal beings. Your tactical approach was impressive." "Thank you, General. More importantly," Mordek continued, "you have proven that these Devourers can be defeated. My fleet commanders are requesting detailed information about your weapons and tactics." "Sir, I'm not sure I have authorization to—" "Captain," Mordek's voice became serious, "my people have been warriors for 1,000 years. We recognize courage when we see it. The Confederation may condemn your actions, but the Krillian Empire respects them." A third signal joined the conversation. Prime Nexus Veltar's artificial voice filled the bridge. "Captain Lee," the AI said, "I have analyzed your engagement data. The effectiveness of kinetic weapons against Devourer technology suggests a fundamental weakness in their defensive systems. This information could be crucial for future encounters." "Are you requesting our tactical data?" Hyun-woo asked. "Negative. I'm offering an exchange. The Synthetic Coalition has mapped devourer movement patterns throughout the galaxy. In return for your weapons data, we will provide real-time intelligence on enemy positions. Hyunwoo looked around his bridge crew. These were the decisions that would shape humanity's future in the galaxy. The Confederation wanted to punish them for fighting, but other species recognized the value of human tactics. General Mordek, Prime Nexus Veltar, he said formally, the human fleet accepts your offers of cooperation. We'll share our tactical data in exchange for your support. As the Sol Dawn limped back toward human space, Hyunwoo reflected on what had just happened. Humanity had just formed its first military alliance outside the Confederation structure. The Krillians and the Synthetics were willing to work with humans because humans got results. Captain, Jihai said, do you think we did the right thing? I think we did the necessary thing, Hyunwoo replied. Sometimes those are the same thing, sometimes they're not, but either way, we're going to keep fighting. The galaxy was learning that humans didn't follow the same rules as everyone else. When threatened, humans didn't form committees or send diplomats. They loaded their weapons and went to war, and they were very good at war. News traveled fast across the galaxy, and the story of humanity's victory over the Devourers spread faster than anyone expected. On dozens of worlds, beings who had never heard of humans before were suddenly asking questions about these strange creatures who fought with primitive weapons and ignored their own government's orders. Lieutenant Jihai Choi stood on the bridge of the destroyer Incheon, watching the tactical display as her mixed fleet approached the Altarian research stations. 3 human ships, 2 Krillian cruisers, and a synthetic coalition monitoring vessel moved in formation through space. It was the first joint task force assembled without Confederation authorization, and Jihai had been chosen to lead it. Ma'am, called Ensign Minho from the communications station, we're receiving a transmission from the research stations. They're reporting crystal formations appearing at the edge of their system. Jihai nodded grimly. The Devourers were following the pattern Dr. So-Young Park had predicted, moving steadily toward the galactic core. The Altarian stations housed some of the galaxy's most advanced scientific equipment, including experimental weapons that could be crucial in the war against the crystal beings. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships prepare for engagement. Remember, kinetic weapons only. Energy weapons will just make them stronger. The joint task force had been drilling together for 2 weeks, practicing human tactics with alien technology. The Krillians had modified their ships to carry more missile tubes, while the synthetic vessel served as a mobile command center with advanced targeting systems. Contact on sensors, reported Lieutenant Sang-woo from the tactical station. 5 crystal ships, larger than the ones we faced at New Busan. Through the view screen, they could see the Devourer vessels surrounding the research stations. The alien ships pulsed with blue light as they began draining energy from the Altarian facilities. Station after station went dark as the crystals fed. They're learning, Jihai muttered. They're hitting multiple targets simultaneously to prevent us from saving them all. Captain Vectar of the Krillian cruiser Iron Fang spoke over the communication channel. Lieutenant Choi, my ship can engage the 2 crystal vessels on the left flank. My warriors are eager to test their new weapons against these energy thieves. Acknowledged, Captain. Synthetic vessel Nexus 7, can you provide targeting data for the central formation? The artificial intelligence responded immediately. Affirmative. Uploading tactical analysis to all vessels. Recommend concentrated fire on the lead crystal ship's power nexus. The battle began as the human ships launched their kinetic torpedoes in coordinated volleys. Chemical explosives bloomed against the crystal hulls while Krillian missiles added their own destructive power to the assault. The Devourers responded by focusing their energy-draining beams on the attacking fleet. Hull breach on Deck 7. Sang-woo reported as the Incheon shuddered under alien fire. But the chemical backup systems are holding. The beauty of human engineering philosophy was becoming clear. While other species built ships that relied entirely on advanced energy systems, humans had always insisted on redundant chemical and mechanical backups. What had seemed like paranoid over-engineering was now saving lives. Direct hit on the lead crystal ship, Minho announced. The Nexus is fragmenting. The damaged Devourer vessel began to list, its blue glow flickering as cracks spread across its hull. But the other crystal ships were adapting, spreading out to avoid concentrated fire and targeting the Krillian vessels that lacked chemical backup systems. Iron Fang is losing power, Captain Vectar reported. his voice strained. "Our energy systems are failing. All human ships," HFY ordered, "cover the Krillian vessels. They can't fight without their main systems." The human destroyers moved between the crystal ships and their allies, using their kinetic weapons to drive the Devourers back. It was a dangerous maneuver that put the human ships in the direct path of the energy-draining beams, but their chemical systems allowed them to keep fighting even as their advanced technology failed. "Lieutenant," Nexus 7's artificial voice cut through the battle noise, "I am detecting something unusual. The Devourers are transmitting data to each other about human tactics. They are sharing information about our weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" "They have determined that while chemical systems resist their energy drain, human ships still rely on electronic targeting systems. They are preparing to use electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable our guidance systems." HFY felt a chill of fear. If the Devourers could blind their targeting systems, the human kinetic weapons would become useless. "All ships," she announced, "prepare for manual targeting. Switch to optical guidance systems only." The order caused confusion among the alien crews. Manual targeting had been abandoned by most species centuries ago when computer-guided weapons became available. But humans still trained their crews in the old methods, just in case. "Ma'am," Sang-Woo said, "manual targeting will reduce our accuracy by 60%. "Then we'll have to get closer," HFY replied. "All ships close to point-blank range." The human fleet accelerated toward the crystal formations, their crews preparing to fight the kind of close-range battle that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for generations. The Devourers responded by unleashing their electromagnetic pulse weapons, sending waves of disruptive energy across space. Electronic systems throughout the fleet failed. Targeting computers went dark, navigation displays flickered and died, but the human ships kept coming, their crews using periscopes and optical sights to aim their weapons manually. "This is insane," Captain Vector muttered over the radio. "How can they fight without their computers?" "Because they're humans," replied Nexus 7 with something that might have been admiration in its artificial voice. "They prepare for scenarios that other species consider impossible." The close-range battle was brutal and chaotic. Human ships fired their railguns at targets they could barely see, relying on instinct and training rather than computer assistance. Chemical explosives detonated against crystal hulls while energy beams tried to drain power from ships that no longer depended on advanced technology. "Direct hit!" Sang-Woo called out as his manually aimed torpedo struck a crystal ship's core. "Target is breaking apart." One by one, the Devourer vessels succumbed to the primitive but effective human tactics. The aliens had adapted to fight an enemy that relied on energy weapons and computer guidance. They hadn't expected an enemy that could fight effectively with chemical weapons and manual targeting. As the last crystal ship exploded, HFY allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Altarian research stations were saved, and the joint fleet had proven that different species could work together using human methods. "Lieutenant Choi," came a new voice over the communication system. Ambassador Kael'thon's face appeared on the main screen, his blue features showing obvious displeasure. "You are operating without Confederation authorization. This joint task force is a violation of—" "Ambassador," HFY interrupted. "With respect, we just saved the Altarian research stations and their 40,000 scientists. I think the results speak for themselves." "The results are irrelevant," Kael'thon replied coldly. "You have created a dangerous precedent by forming military alliances outside Confederation oversight. What happens when every species decides to ignore Council authority?" Before HFY could answer, another face appeared on the screen. It was Governor Tal Shi of the Altarian Republic, her insectoid features showing obvious gratitude. "Ambassador Kael'thon," the Altarian said, "perhaps you should ask my people how they feel about these unauthorized actions. 40,000 of my citizens are alive because these brave beings chose to act rather than debate." The argument that followed was broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, member species were openly questioning the Confederation's slow response to the Devourer threat. Worlds that had requested military protection were asking specifically for human-led task forces rather than official Confederation fleets. "The cascade has begun," Nexus 7 observed privately to HFY. "My analysis indicates that 16 different species are now requesting human military advisors. The Confederation's authority is being challenged by practical results." HFY, looked out at the joint fleet regrouping around the saved research stations. Humans, Krillians, and synthetics working together without permission from any government. It was exactly the kind of thing that would drive the Confederation bureaucrats crazy. "Good," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that some things are more important than following rules." As news of the Altarian victory spread, more species began to question why they needed to ask permission to defend themselves. The humans had shown that decisive action could save lives while bureaucratic procedures led only to death. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading that change. Not through diplomacy or political maneuvering, but through the simple act of standing up and fighting when fighting was needed. The cascade effect had begun, and there was no stopping it now. The Great Hall of Harmony Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives shouted at each other across the chamber while emergency alarms blared in the background. The Devourer fleet was only 3 days away from the core systems, and the Galactic Council was still deadlocked in debate. Commander Tae-Ho Kim stood in the observation gallery, watching the political theater unfold below. Dr. So-Young Park stood beside him, her face pale as she studied the latest intelligence reports. "They're still arguing about authorization procedures," she said quietly. "The largest Devourer fleet ever assembled is heading straight for Harmony Prime, and they're debating whether they have the legal authority to fight back." Tae-Ho's jaw tightened as he listened to Ambassador Kael'thon address the chamber. "The sacred protocols exist for good reason," the Vorthak diplomat declared. "If we abandon them now, we set a precedent that any species can ignore Confederation law whenever they feel justified." "And if we follow them," General Mordek replied from his seat, "we'll all be dead before the authorization goes through. The humans have proven that these crystal creatures can be defeated, but only if we act quickly." The debate had been raging for 6 hours. Outside the station, scattered human fleets were already moving into defensive positions around the core worlds. They had been joined by Krillian task forces, synthetic coalition vessels, and ships from a dozen other species who had grown tired of waiting for official permission to defend themselves. "The humans are forming an illegal military alliance," Ambassador Kael'thon continued. "They have seduced other species into abandoning proper procedure. This cannot be allowed to continue." Dr. Park activated her datapad and accessed the latest tactical reports. "Tae-Ho, you need to see this. Prime Nexus Veltar has been sharing intelligence with our fleet commanders. The Devourer formations are massive, larger than anything we've seen before." On her screen, red dots showed enemy positions moving through hyperspace toward the galactic capital. The scale was terrifying. Over 200 crystal ships, each one larger than the vessels they had fought before. "They've been building up their forces," So-Young continued. "Every attack, every victory they've achieved has made them stronger. They're not just randomly feeding anymore. This is a coordinated assault on the seat of galactic government." Tae-Ho studied the data, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. "They want to take out the Council. If they destroy Harmony Prime, the Confederation government collapses, and they can feed on the resulting chaos." A new voice spoke from the chamber floor. Prime Nexus Veltar's artificial tones carried clearly through the hall. "I have completed statistical analysis of current Devourer capabilities versus available Confederation forces," the AI announced. "Following standard engagement protocols, probability of successful defense is 12.7%. Following human tactical, doctrine probability increases to 67.3%. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Ambassador Kael'thon spoke again. "Prime Nexus, are you suggesting we abandon established military doctrine in favor of human methods?" "I am suggesting we use the methods that work," the AI replied. "The humans have achieved a 94.2% success rate against Devourer forces. Standard Confederation tactics have achieved a 0% success rate." General Mordek stood up, his scarred face grim with determination. "I move to suspend the sacred protocols for the duration of this crisis and place human military advisors in command of all defensive operations." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some representatives supported the motion while others shouted objections. Ambassador Kael'thon looked as though he might have a stroke. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he declared. "The humans are using this crisis to seize military control of the Confederation." Tae-Ho had heard enough. He activated his communication device and sent a signal to the chamber floor, requesting permission to speak. The speaker's tendrils waved in what might have been annoyance. The human observer may address the council. Tejo walked down to the central platform, aware that every eye in the chamber was focused on him. The weight of history pressed down on his shoulders. What he said next would determine not just the fate of the current battle, but the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. "Representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "3 days ago, my scouts confirmed that the Devourer fleet includes Nexus ships, massive command vessels that coordinate their attacks. These ships are heading directly for this station." Murmurs filled the chamber. Several representatives looked nervous. "The Devourers don't want to negotiate," Tejo continued. "They don't want territory or resources. They want to consume the energy that keeps our civilization running. If they destroy Harmony Prime, they'll feed off the collapse of galactic government," Ambassador Kael'thon interrupted. "Commander Kim, this council is perfectly capable of defending itself once proper authorization procedures are complete," Tejo finished. "How long will that take? Another 6 hours? 12? 24? Because the Devourers will be here in 72 hours. He activated a holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. The sight silenced the chamber. "You see 200 crystal ships," Tejo said, pointing at the display. "I see 200 targets. My fleets are already in position. We have Krillian cruisers loaded with kinetic weapons, synthetic vessels providing real-time intelligence, and human ships prepared to fight at close range where our chemical systems give us an advantage." "Without authorization," Kael'thon reminded him. "Without permission," Tejo corrected. "But not without authorization. Every ship in that fleet is crewed by beings who have sworn to protect their homeworlds. Every captain has the authority to defend innocent lives. We don't need your permission to do what's right." The chamber was silent now, every representative listening intently. "You want to know what human tactics really are?" Tejo asked. "They're simple. When someone threatens innocent people, you stop them. When diplomacy fails, you fight. When the enemy is stronger, you get creative. And when the bureaucrats say you can't act because the paperwork isn't filed properly, you act anyway and worry about the consequences later." General Mordek began to applaud, his clapping echoing through the chamber. One by one, other representatives joined in. Even some of the Vorthak delegation looked impressed. But Ambassador Kael'thon remained unmoved. "And what happens after you win, Commander? Do you simply hand power back to the Council? Or do the humans keep their new position as galactic military leaders?" Tejo met the alien's gaze directly. "Ambassador, humans didn't ask to be military leaders. We just want our people to be safe. But if leading means keeping innocent beings alive, then yes, we'll lead. And if other species want to follow our example, we'll teach them everything we know." The speaker called for a formal vote on General Mordek's motion. The debate that followed was brief but intense. Representatives who had spent hours arguing about procedure suddenly found themselves focused on a simple question. Did they want to live or die according to proper protocol? The final vote was closer than Tejo had hoped, but it was enough. The sacred protocols were suspended for the duration of the crisis. Human military doctrine would guide the defense of Harmony Prime. As the session ended, Prime Nexus Veltar approached Tejo in the corridor outside the chamber. "Commander," the AI said, "I have prepared detailed tactical plans based on human methods. The Synthetic Coalition will provide full support for your operations." "Thank you," Tejo replied. "But I have to ask, why are you helping us? This goes against your original programming." The artificial being paused for a moment as if processing the question. "My original programming required me to maximize the survival probability of sentient life in the galaxy. The humans have demonstrated superior ability to achieve this goal. Therefore, supporting human methods is consistent with my core directives." Tejo smiled. "Welcome to the team." As the Allied fleet prepared for the final battle, Tejo reflected on how much had changed since the crisis began. Humanity had gone from junior members of the Confederation to de facto military leaders of an alliance that crossed all species lines, but they hadn't asked for power. They had simply acted when action was needed, and others had chosen to follow their example. The breaking point had been reached. The galaxy would either unite behind human leadership or fall to the Devourers. In 72 hours, they would learn which path history would take. Either way, humans would be ready to fight. The space around Harmony Prime had become a fortress. Ships from dozens of species formed defensive lines around the galactic capital, their crews preparing for the largest battle in known history. At the center of it all, Commander Tae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the approaching Devourer fleet on the tactical display. Final count confirms 237 crystal ships, reported Dr. So-Young Park from the science station. The Nexus vessels are massive. Each one is larger than our biggest battleships. Captain Hyunwoo Lee's voice crackled over the communication system from the Seoul Dawn. Commander, our scouts report that the enemy formation is spreading out to attack from multiple directions. They're trying to prevent us from concentrating our fire. Tae-ho nodded grimly. The Devourers had learned from their previous defeats. They were no longer underestimating human tactics. All fleet commanders, he announced over the general communication channel. Remember the plan. Kinetic weapons only. Target the Nexus ships first. Cut off their command structure and the smaller vessels will be confused. Lieutenant Ji-hai, Choi's voice joined the conversation from her position commanding the outer defense line. Sir, the alien crews are nervous. Most of them have never fought a battle like this before. Then it's time they learned, Tae-ho replied. Human Doctrine Lesson 1. When you're outnumbered, you make every shot count. The Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystal hulls gleaming with deadly blue light. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Over 200 ships that could drain the energy from entire star systems, but the Allied fleet was ready for them. All ships, Tae-ho commanded, commence attack. Target the lead Nexus vessel. The battle began with a coordinated barrage of kinetic weapons. Human torpedoes streaked toward the crystal ships, while Krillian missiles added their destructive power. The synthetic coalition vessels provided targeting data while maintaining safe distances from the energy-draining beams. The lead Nexus ship shuddered under the impact of dozens of chemical explosives, but its massive hull absorbed the damage. These command vessels were larger and more heavily armored than anything the Allies had faced before. Direct hits on the target, Hyunwoo reported. But it's still operational. We need more firepower. That's when the Devourers revealed their new strategy. Instead of trying to engage the entire Allied fleet at once, they focused their energy-draining beams on the ships carrying the most advanced systems, the Krillian cruisers and synthetic vessels. Iron Fang is losing power, Captain Vector announced. His voice strained. All energy systems failing. Nexus 7 going dark, reported the artificial intelligence. Energy drain exceeding safe parameters. Tae-ho watched as his most powerful allies were neutralized by the Devourer tactics. But he had expected this. Human paranoia had prepared for exactly this scenario. All human vessels, he ordered, execute Protocol 0. Across the fleet, human ships began shutting down their energy-based systems voluntarily. Advanced computers went dark. Plasma weapons powered down. Life support switched to chemical backup systems. The human vessels transformed themselves into primitive chemical-powered warships that the Devourers couldn't easily disable. This is madness, Captain Vector muttered over the radio. How can they fight without their main systems? Because they're humans, So-Young replied, manually targeting a crystal ship with optical sights. They always have a backup plan. The tide of battle began to turn as the human ships pressed their attack using weapons that hadn't been seen in civilized warfare for centuries. Chemical rockets, kinetic railguns, and old-fashioned explosive shells tore through crystal hulls that had seemed invincible. Captain Lee piloted the Seoul Dawn directly toward the largest Nexus ship, his vessels, systems failing one by one as Devourer energy beams focused on him. Hyunwoo, Tae-ho called over the radio. Your ship is taking too much damage. Pull back. Negative, Commander, Lee replied calmly. I've got a clear shot at their command center. My sister's family lives on New Busan because we saved it. Now, it's time to save everyone else. The Seoul Dawn's final torpedo volley struck the Nexus ship's central crystal formation. Chemical explosives tore through the alien structure, sending cascading failures throughout the Devourer command network. The Nexus is fragmenting, So-Young reported with excitement. The smaller ships are losing coordination. But the victory came at a cost. The Sol Dawn was crippled, its hull breached in dozens of places. Captain Lee's final transmission was calm and professional. "This is Sol Dawn. Mission accomplished. Take care of my crew." The sacrifice galvanized the Allied fleet. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly pressed forward, inspired by human courage and determination. Krillian vessels switched to their backup kinetic weapons, while synthetic ships used their remaining power to coordinate targeting data. "For the Sol Dawn," Lieutenant Choi announced, as her destroyer led a charge against the second Nexus ship. For every world they destroyed. The battle raged for 3 hours. Crystal ships exploded under kinetic bombardment, while energy beams tried desperately to drain power from vessels that no longer depended on advanced technology. The Devourers had built their entire civilization around energy manipulation, but they had never faced an enemy willing to abandon technology in favor of brute force. One by one, the Nexus ships fell. Without their command structure, the smaller Devourer vessels became confused and disorganized. The Allied fleet pressed their advantage, hunting down the remaining crystal ships with methodical precision. When the last Devourer vessel exploded, the space around Harmony Prime fell silent except for the crackle of damaged communication systems. "All ships report," Taeho commanded. The casualty reports came in slowly. The Allied fleet had lost 37 vessels, including the Sol Dawn, but they had completely destroyed the largest Devourer force ever assembled. The threat to galactic civilization was over. Ambassador Kael'thon's face appeared on the main screen, his blue features showing a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Commander Kim," he said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for saving Harmony Prime and our civilization." "You're welcome, Ambassador," Taeho replied. Now what happens next? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The humans had just proven that their methods were superior to traditional Confederation doctrine. Other species had followed human leadership into battle and emerged victorious. The old order was clearly broken. "The Council will need time to consider the implications," Kael'thon said carefully. "Your actions have saved us all, but they have also challenged fundamental principles of galactic governance." General Mordek's scarred face appeared on another screen. "Commander Kim, the Krillian Empire formally requests that human military advisors be assigned to our fleets. We want to learn these tactics." Prime Nexus Veltar joined the conversation. "The Synthetic Coalition concurs. Human doctrine has proven statistically superior for crisis response." More faces appeared on the communication screens. Representatives from dozens of worlds asking for human military assistance, human training programs, human leadership. Taeho looked around his damaged bridge at the crew members who had just saved galactic civilization using weapons their ancestors would have recognized. They had proven that sometimes the most advanced solution was the simplest one. "Ambassador," he said finally, "humanity didn't ask to lead the galaxy. We just wanted to protect innocent lives. But if other species want to learn from our example, we'll teach them." 6 months later, the new emergency response protocols were signed into galactic law. The sacred protocols were revised to allow immediate military action when civilian lives were threatened. Human military academies were established on dozens of worlds to teach other species how to fight without depending entirely on advanced technology. Commander Taeho Kim stood before the reformed Galactic Council, wearing the insignia of the new Crisis Response Authority. The hall was different now, less formal debate, more practical decision-making. "The humans have taught us something important," Ambassador Kael'thon said during the ceremony. "Sometimes protecting civilization requires abandoning civilized behavior. Sometimes survival demands action without permission." Dr. So-Young Park, now Director of Xenobiological Defense Research, smiled from her seat in the gallery. The galaxy had learned that when faced with an existential threat, human determination and willingness to act could overcome any technological advantage. The age of asking permission was over. The age of human leadership had begun. And across the galaxy, billions of beings slept safely, knowing that somewhere, humans stood ready to fight for them without asking anyone's permission. The new paradigm was simple. When innocent lives were threatened, decent beings took action. The paperwork could wait until after the children were safe. It was the most human principle imaginable, and now it belonged to the entire galaxy.